Live with Carnegie Hall is made possible by Hope and Robert F. Smith and brought to you by Bank of America. Additional support is provided by the Siegel Family Endowment.
Hi, I'm Clive Gillinson, the Executive and Artistic Director of Carnegie Hall, and it's wonderful to welcome you all back to Live with Carnegie Hall. Today we're marking a very special celebration, the 100th anniversary of the birth of the great Isaac Stern. Not only was Isaac one of the greatest violinists of the 20th century, he also had a unique and irreplaceable impact on music around the entire world. He's the reason why so many of our lives are centered around New York City and this jewel of a concert hall, for me, the greatest concert hall in the world. The story of how he led the campaign to save the hall from the wrecking ball is too well known to repeat, but without him, we would have lost one of the wonders of the world. In honor of all that he did to save the hall, he served as the hall's visionary president for over 40 years, and our iconic main hall is named in his honor. I grew up as a young musician on Isaac's recordings, and two particular LPs of mine, the Brahms Violin Concerto and the Brahms Double Concerto, where he partnered with the wonderful Leonard Rose, were practically worn to destruction from endless playing. They are truly some of the greatest recordings ever. I also had the great and inspiring privilege of playing in the London Symphony Orchestra for a number of concerto performances he gave with us, and his performances were always a cause for great celebration. In addition to his life as a truly great violinist, he was a passionate and inspirational educator and a great pioneer, traveling to China on a performance and teaching trip that was immortalized in the film From Mao to Mozart. All of us at Carnegie Hall and everybody around the world owe Isaac an infinite debt of gratitude that is too large to quantify. I think it's absolutely true to say that the world of music that we know and love today would not be the same as it is had he not lived and made New York City his home. We're thrilled to welcome a remarkable group of artists to this celebration, for all of whom he played a central and inspirational role in their lives, and they will talk all about this. In such a time of unprecedented turmoil throughout the world, his example reminds us of the power of visionary leadership, and we have all benefited from the lasting legacy of this giant of an artist and giant of a human being. So happy birthday, Isaac, and I hope you'll all enjoy our centenary tribute to him.
Let's start with this. The thing that we both remember so well is what?
The glasses.
Manny, we must talk. Let's take it to the musicianship.
Well, that all played out because the musical talent was off the charts.
Well, it was like the instincts, right? I mean,
Right.
there's something...
Exactly. He, somewhere in the stomach, he knew exactly where to place a note. That to me was, in a way, the most important thing. The timing, you know, not too early, not too late, not too loud, not too soft, just right. And that's a rare quality.
You talk about timing. I think of it in terms of sculpting. You know, that he somehow was able to take the energy and speed of the bow and to be able to use that, the speed and pressure differently for each note. And also, I think the way that he listened
Yes.
to a group that
Yes.
always his ear picked out
Yeah.
really the relevant places that lent greater clarity, maybe?
Yeah, well, also, there was also a generosity about you know, when you heard the big concertos, especially, I thought he had he had a vision of this music that was the way his personality, if you describe that as larger than life.
It goes without saying, Isaac was a wonderful violinist, and he was for me, like a wonderful musical architect. He could put everything together, and everything had to do with timing and with phrasing, and he took a musical jigsaw puzzle and was able to put all the pieces where it would fit, so that when you hear a performance, it would sound just right because of all the pieces that were fitting together with the timing and with the phrasing. His passion for food, which coincides with my passion for food, that I don't think many people know. Isaac knew how to read a menu. It was like reading a musical score. He was the best person to have dinners with. I'll give you an example. I was having dinner with, looking at an extensive menu with lots of great choices, and I was kind of baffled. I didn't know what to do. And Isaac says, "Yitzhak, what is going on? What is the problem?" And I said, "Isaac," I said, "look, I like this very much, and I also like that very much." So Isaac says, "No problem. Just let's get both." Problem solved.
There's so many wonderful stories about him, and we miss this man so much. I miss so much the concerts and the playing and the teaching that we did together, the encounters that he had at Carnegie Hall, which was so great, and all the festivals we did together. And God, there's so many. I could go on for hours with all the stories. Like
about the time he left his violin.
Well, the music. He always left things. I remember once in Palm Springs, we were playing piano quartets with Manny X and Yo-Yo Ma,
we're about to go on stage to play what is it?
The Brahms quartet, the
piano
Brahms G minor
G
piano
minor
quartet.
piano with Jamie
Yes.
Laredo.
Yes.
Just as we were about to walk on stage, what does he say?
Listen, boys, where's my music?
He had left it in the hotel.
30 minutes away.
So he said, I'm going back to the hotel. Boys, you take care of it.
Take care of it. I'll be back in a while.
So that, Manny and Yo-Yo thought, okay, well, let's play a Beethoven sonata, because that they could do by memory and all that. So they did that.
And so we played the first movement.
And expecting him to be back because we played slow and whatever.
Still not there.
No Isaac Stern. We played the second movement. Waited, no Isaac Stern. We played the last movement. And after we finished, like applause, and here he comes triumphantly holding
Yes,
the
with
music. Boys, I'm back. And then we started playing the project.
The concert that was beginning at 7:30 ended around 11:30 at night. But anyway, what he did for music, especially Carnegie Hall, is
It's a miracle.
it is a miracle. And God, we miss him so much. And Isaac, happy birthday.
Happy 100.
Isaac was an extraordinary visionary. Loved talent, loved beautiful music, loved life, and we just try to continue his legacy in the future. Thank you, Carnegie Hall, for celebrating Isaac's birthday, and I hope we soon can play again live concerts in the hall that he adored and loved.
I think one of the things that made him an extraordinary leader is that he was very collaborative. And whether or not it meant that he had an idea, wanted to run with it, and then found the right people to put in place to fulfill that vision, he was always able to do that. He worked very collaboratively, whether or not it was on the NEA or whether it was Carnegie or any number of projects that he undertook.
I think what's important to think is not just, it had everything to do with him as a musician as well. He was as much a performer as he was a listener. He was constantly listening around him. That's what made him such a good collaborator as a chamber musician. For him, music was something that you listened to as much as you performed, but as much as a doer, he was a listener.
And I think, you know, a lot of people who played chamber music with him, a lot of the friends and colleagues who remain not only close to us, but as colleagues and friends, but also who remember him so fondly, always say the same thing, which is in rehearsal, he would never say, no, it's a bad idea, or do it my way. It was always, oh, let's try it, always. And he had natural curiosity, and he also was not afraid to get a better idea and then make everybody better because of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's,
yeah, he was also to a degree, he was a perfectionist. And it wasn't just, let's try that. It's let's try that again, and let's try that again, and let's try that again, so that everybody sounded better. It was never about him.
At the same point, as a perfectionist in music sometimes has a difficult implication that, you know, you're always looking just to be clean. And with that, he was looking to say something and be honest and be sincere. And in terms of what the final result was, it had to be something that was convincing to him. And if he was convinced of it himself, it would be convincing to others. So yeah, he was the musician and the leader was very much, they were very much intertwined, those personas.
In a few moments, I shall join the New York Philharmonic and Zubin Mehta and Marilyn Horne in a complete performance of the work that you just heard me play a fragment of. And indeed, that is the reason for tonight, for this hall performance. To be able to hear, as you have heard now, the sound of this hall, the extraordinary sound. That is the uniqueness of this auditorium. Since the day it was opened by Tchaikovsky in May of 1891, and then with the figures who have conducted and performed here, Mahler, who conducted here, Toscanini, Bruno Walter, the debut of Leonard Bernstein, Paderewski performed, Heifetz played, Horowitz played, Rubinstein. Every major figure in the history of music since 1891 has been here on this stage. And then there is something that goes on between the audience and the performer. And that something is what we call the magic of Carnegie Hall.
The most important thing about Isaac Stern is that none of us would be here without him. There were various committees to save Carnegie Hall, but it was Isaac who had the vision to figure out, okay, let's save it, now let's do something with it. Robert Moses wanted to give New York City the greatest performing arts center in the world. 1957, they announced this Lincoln Square has now become Lincoln Center. And the first design was unbelievable. Isaac thinks, you know what? Let them build Lincoln Center. We'll turn Carnegie Hall into an academy of music where we will teach children. We will have music lessons for musicians who will play at Lincoln Center someday, and we'll create an orchestra made up of kids from all over the country. Sound familiar? And they went to work. The Carnegie Hall Corporation is formed, and in less than 5 months, they were able to convince the city and to purchase the hall. And bingo, Carnegie Hall was saved. Both Andrew Carnegie and Isaac Stern would have been stunned because, number one, Andrew Carnegie wanted the people who come to hear concerts to help fund the building. And he couldn't find anyone. And yet 70 years later, the city of New York bought it, made it a nonprofit organization, and it is being funded now by the people. Isaac wanted that to become an academy of music. And look what happened. The building was transformed to house to be the Weill Music Institute. It's just a remarkable story that Isaac is behind, but he was not alone, but he certainly was at the head of the pack, leading the charge.
I think Carnegie Hall played such a huge role for Dad, not just in his career, but in his whole concept of what was his point of being a musician. When the time came to decide how to save Carnegie Hall, when it was its existence was threatened, Saul Hurok and he decided together actually that this would be a good direction for him to go to, that this was a good idea. And he threw himself into it with our mother's help. The two of them were in a tandem that knew no bounds. And they decided that this was going to be their great adventure to save this wonderful hall. And it changed him not just as a musician, but as a person. I think it gave him the understanding that being a musician comes also with the responsibility of what it means to be an artist in today's society. And if it meant defending the good fight and going out there and developing something for the sake of music and art and generations of the future, then it was worth it.
But it was also not something that he started and then stopped. It was something that took him throughout his life, and he continued to have Carnegie in the center of his focus. And what could he do to enhance the musical life, both of New York City and then of the world at large, because he really considered Carnegie to be the center of the musical world.
I also think, and specifically with Carnegie, he really pretty quickly realized that Carnegie could be more than anything that it had been up to that point. Because for a long time, it was a presenting hall. It was a rental hall. It was just a really great space. It was the home of the New York Philharmonic, but it was not the kind of presenting or educational institution that he always dreamed about. He actually never quite saw the fruition of his dream the way he wanted, but he always worked towards it. And everybody who was at Carnegie with him, especially in the 80s and the 90s, know how single-minded he was in that direction. And his devotion to Carnegie, as Shira said, was complete.
As someone who led Carnegie towards a renewal, as Michael says, of no longer being to be becoming a presenting hall, he gave the hall the tools necessary for it to act on its own. He never acted like a boss, telling it where to go.
He was proud of what the hall accomplished, but he was also proud that in New York, and remember, there were times during this period when he was really active at Carnegie in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, where there was real financial distress in the city. there were a lot of questions about the viability of the arts in the city, but also of the city as a sort of crumbling infrastructure. He never lost sight of the fact that the arts could be one of the ways that what was great about New York could lift everybody up.
He loved that hall to his bones. You know, it just made him smile. He was passionate about it, and he could communicate that to people and say, I want you to be as passionate about it as I. How can I help you get there? How can we get to yes? Both of our parents got to yes.
He would say, he would look out from the stage and he would say that the walls are talking. And every great artist who's ever been there in the huge history of Carnegie Hall could still be heard in the walls. And when you heard him talking about this, you heard the voices speaking. You heard the wall. You heard Carnegie's voice through him. Because it was like a kid in a toy shop. He was so happy, and it was completely sincere. There was no faking. He was a terrible faker. He just didn't know how to do it. But he certainly knew how to share his deepest feelings and the deepest parts of his soul. And that's what people felt when he spoke and when he played.
there's also something that tapped into something really elemental from his childhood in two ways. One is he understood really profoundly that he was an immigrant and that he never went to school. And he was a pretty well-read guy, and he was a pretty smart guy. And I mean, when you think about what his parents, who were in their early 20s, were going through, crossing the ocean with this 10-month-old kid. They spoke no language. They didn't have a shekel in their pockets. And yet they got to San Francisco, and he started his life and made himself into what he did with a lot of hard work. He wanted better for his children. He wanted to say thank you to his country, and he wanted to be perceived as somebody who was contributing to New York specifically, but in a larger sense to the American idea of culture.
He was a founder of the Jerusalem Music Center. He was one of the founders of the National Endowment for the Humanities. He was a mentor. I mean, imagine that while he was doing all of this, he was also finding talents. Pinchas Zuckerman, Itzhak Perlman, Yo-Yo Ma, Midori, Gil Shahan, many acts, and it never stopped.
There's that other work that was going on all the time,
Yes.
not because of Carnegie, not because of, but because he just was interested.
He was
And
interested.
talent.
He loved young people.
He loved to figure out, and to kind of be able to gauge how someone might develop, and that's an extraordinary amount of energy spent.
And he was incredibly generous to a whole generation of people.
Yeah.
No question.
Mr. Stern, this would have been your 100th birthday, and I'm so happy to be here today to celebrate it. Happy birthday. You taught me so much about what it means to be responsible, and responsible as a musician, responsible as an interpreter, responsible as just a person living in this world today. I will continue, we will all continue. Those of us whose lives have been so impacted by your presence and by your teaching, I think we'll go on, we'll carry on your mission, we'll continue on to make the music as much as we can, as sincerely as we can, as honestly as we can be truthful to the music. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Carnegie has not succeeded and is not Carnegie because it tells people what to do. We do it and ask you to follow. We try to create a path because we believe in people. Without people, there's no point in my playing the fiddle or anything happening on stage. Somebody's got to listen. And I'm not talking now about classical music alone. I'm talking about watching dance, going to the ballet, going to the opera, going to see a painting in a museum, dancing in the street, dancing at a street folk festival. All of it is movement, music, and life. And this is what today is all about. To get you to understand how deeply we at Carnegie believe that this is a basic necessity to make this as civilized a city as it can be. And to reach out into the country, that the country should be remembered by its civilization, not its racism or its constant fighting. Realize that if orchestras, ballet companies, football teams would act like the politics act a great deal of the time, you'd never have an orchestra, you wouldn't have a football team, you wouldn't have anything because nobody would work together. And this is a way of starting to work together. Having made this the serious basis of all this, let me show you the whys and wherefores, why we think from this can come order here, and contentment in the heart, and happiness between the kids. If each of you will now take a violin, we will try and see what happens. This is a roundabout way to tell you what happens in the mind of a child learning this for the first time. How to hold the instrument, how to hold the bow, to be friendly with this thing so that you can go. So I will play, and you go. Right? That's all. No, this is your first orchestral job. Now you're getting the idea. Now think for a moment. That's fine. You see? You know, for you, we have special service at Carnegie Hall. We rent it to you for twice as much. This is why we ask you, please, to work with your schools, work with the quality of your teachers. Get them excited about getting the kids excited. I don't think there's probably, I know I've never received a no to this answer, to this question. I've asked everybody who's ever done anything, whether it be in music, in boxing, in tennis, in mathematics, in philosophy, in writing, and dancing. Somewhere, sometime, one teacher said something in a class and a light went on. So you have to find the switches. That's why you're superintendents. And that's why everything that you think is important, you've got to make it think it's important to every teacher in the system. That they are our responsibility, our collective responsibility. And get everybody involved. I don't care whether they're teaching one and two make three, but they have to believe it desperately. And the same thing with music. And the children who learn music will understand 1 + 2 makes 3 quicker than the others. Are there any questions? Yeah. What? You ready to play? One last time, okay? Let's go. First string. Second string. 4 string. That's it. Thank you very much.
He always used to say, you know, I believe in music and I believe in young people. And between the two of them, you put them together, you can really get things done.
The world is a better place.
A better place. So I think, and this is really, I would maybe say I speak for Shearer, David, and myself when I say that our reason for wanting to celebrate him in his centenary year was not simply to mark the calendar, and it wasn't because we needed a vanity project, and we didn't, you know, he was a great musician and a great player, and he needs no help from us to make that case. But I think especially at this time, when the world is so anxious and so selfish sometimes, when the myopic disregard and lack of empathy and lack of leadership leads to such narrow confines, to remember somebody who had so much advocacy and energy in his engagement for the future and for the arts, and put his money where his mouth was and stood up, as David said before, for the good fight. I think that is the lesson that we wanted to celebrate, because that's too rare, and we should have more advocacy like that, and we should have more activism like that. And if Carnegie Hall remains as a legacy and as a symbol of what he accomplished, that's fine, but it goes way beyond the bricks and mortar of the building.
The vision of the institution for which he had a distinct vision for, and to this day, you know, I think I appreciate the quality of people that he surrounded himself with. Absolutely. That actually was able to sustain through hard times. I don't think it was an easy journey to not save Carnegie Hall, but actually to build it, and then for it today, after his passing, to come to its present form. There's the foundation was laid that was so important, that actually, that to me is as strong a legacy as his seeding talent in people and recognizing talent, young talent in musicians. I think towards the end of his life, the fact that he did, you know, Isaac Stern and Friends, and did all of these things, of which so much of what the Weill Institute is doing today is a result of this thing. And I have to tell you one thing, towards the end of his life, I don't know if you remember, but he wanted sort of like, I'm going to misquote him, but more or less almost like a SWAT team of young musicians to go all over and to change the world. I mean, he was obsessed, but he was really on the forefront of not just saying Carnegie Hall is great, but rather what is the future that we have to take care of? What's going to be, and I think a lot of what is being done today is a direct result of the DNA vision, the DNA of the vision that continues to spread, is all part and parcel of an organic way of thinking about music, and culture. So
I wish I'd said all of that.
I wish I had not said anything, but things being as they may, we miss him.
We miss him a lot.
We miss him.
We miss him a lot.
But I think his presence is felt, and it's felt, and we see it in his children. We see that vision continued, and we see this continued in so many musicians that he has touched.
I was very touched when I saw his tombstone at the cemetery in Connecticut. and it says Isaac Stern, fiddler. I think that says it all.
And thus we come to the end of a special occasion to mark the birthday of a special lady. The hall on 57th Street, Carnegie Hall, because it is for the making of music that this house was built, to enrich our lives, to be human, to touch each other. This is what this hall is about. That's what music making is about. Speaking without words, but with love. We thank you for joining us. Good night.